Let's start talking about classes. So if previously we've seen data types like int, boolean, string, and we've seen what we can do with them, what type of data they store, and some behaviors that they might have. Now we're going to start looking at classes. I think it's very, very important to understand from the very beginning that a class is a custom data type that is defined by us. So this data type is going to be defined by us. We get to be the creators and we get to decide what properties and what functionality any instance of that class is going to have. So if we have a look in the description here, it says a class is a set of instructions that describe how an instance can behave and what information it contains. So now if we have a look at the definition, so how do we define a class? Well, we have to use the keyword here. So this is a very important keyword called class. So we have to say public class, and then we give the name of the class. In our case here, it's car. And then we have curly bracket, opened and closed here. So this is an open curly bracket, and this is a closed one. And inside we will have some properties and some behavior. So some fields and some methods that any object created from this class is gonna have. So like I said, this example above defines a class named car. Public is an access level modifier that allows other classes to interact with this class. For now, all classes will be public, so for now don't worry about what this means. Okay? This class has a main method, and this main method, if you remember, we have seen in the previous lectures where we said that the main method is the entrance to any Java program, like the starting point of any Java program. And the main method runs when we execute the compiled class.car file. So this would be when we run it like this from the command prompt. Otherwise, we simply have to press run here. Now, if we have a look at the instructions in the code editor, so here, create a public store class, okay? So we said that we need to put public, that we said this is an access modifier, and we're gonna learn about this in the future videos. And then we use the keyword class, and the name of the class is store. As you can see here, the name of the class starts with capital letter, and we have the opening and the curly and the closing curly bracket. Okay, we've done this. Let's run. Okay, and it says your program will not compile without a main method. Define one within the store. So within the store class, we need to define the main method. Also, we can have a look here. So it goes like this: public static void main, and within the parentheses here, we have to put string args. Okay. Now, if I'm gonna run this code, we're gonna get rid of this error. So now, because our class has a main method, it's not gonna throw this error anymore. Simply because whenever we run a program, the first thing that Java does is gonna look for the main method. It's gonna go looking for the main method, because the main method is the starting point of any Java application. So I've run the code now, and as you can see, there's no more errors being displayed here. If we move on to the next lesson, we see we need to talk about constructors. So we create objects. So an object is an instance of a class. So we use this model, so whichever class we create, and we don't use this class per se, so not this one. We can create instances, or think of this as like, you know, like a parent and a child. So we can create instances of this class. So in this class, we only define the properties and the functionality that we want any object that comes into existence to have. Okay. So now the constructor helps us to define how these objects come into existence. So if we have a look here, we create objects which are instances of a class using a constructor method. The constructor is defined within the class. Here's the class with the constructor, the car class with a constructor. So we have the class like we've seen in the previous lesson. And we also have the opening and the closing curly bracket, which if you see it highlights here. So this opening one is closed by this one here, down here on line 17. And now we also have on line 4, we have something that is called the constructor. Okay, so it's gonna have this type of naming. It's gonna have the same name as our class, and essentially a constructor is some sort of kind of a special method. Okay, it does not have any other notation apart from the public and the name of the class exactly as is, followed by the these parentheses. Okay, and then of course we have the main method. Now we can create instances by calling or invoking the constructor within the main. This example assigns an instance of the variable Ferrari. Okay, so the way we create an instance of a class or an object, so this is the object here, yeah, this is where the object gets created, is by using the name of the class, and then we create a variable that is gonna hold the object that is created from the class. Okay, from the class blueprint, from the class called car. Okay, now exactly here it says, just like with all the other variables, variable declarations, we specify the type. So the type is car. Remember when we used to create an int called age, and it will be equal to, I don't know, 20, let's say. The int was the type, yeah. Age was the name of the variable. And then what followed after the equal sign was the actual value that we would store inside that variable. Well, in this case, we have the car, which is the data type. We have the name of the variable. We have the equal sign, which is the sign for giving a value, so for storing a value inside a variable. And then here we give it a new instance of the car class, okay, so of this car class. So this is called an object, okay. We're gonna learn more about this as we go. So we invoke the constructor. the constructor method, car and the parentheses here. So this is our constructor, okay, which was defined here. And if we were to, for example, forget to type this new keyword, we will get an error. Now, if we have a look at the instructions, let's explore how code execution moves around the file with two methods. So let's add the print statement inside our store constructor with the message, I am inside the constructor method. So let's copy this. And it says this statement, this print statement, needs to be inside our store constructor. So the constructor is here. And if you remember from the previous classes, we have to use system.out.println. And we're going to end it with a semicolon. And inside, because we want to display on the screen some text, we need to put it into double quotes. We add the text, whichever text the instructions told us to put. We'll see this message whenever we create an instance of the store, so of this class, by calling the constructor. Okay. So if we run this, we get start of the main method, because this is what we currently have in our starting point. So in our main method. Okay. So in the main method, the system is gonna look for whatever code is put in here, and currently we only have this code on line 11, which says display this text on the screen. So the start of the main method. Now, in the second instruction, it tells us we did not see our constructor message printed because we haven't run the code inside the constructor. So remember here, I said that the constructor is invoked when we use the new keyword plus this name of the constructor, okay? Now, inside the main, it tells us to create an instance of the store called lemonade stand. So I'm gonna copy this name. And I'm gonna go here because we already have these comments to help us know where to place the code. So we need to first put the name of the class, so the data type, yeah, store. We said we need to call it lemonade stand, and then we need to use the special keyword new, and then we go and invoke the constructor. And of course, we end it with a semicolon. Now, if we run this, what do you think is going to happen? So our program is going to compile, and then it goes into the main method, and it looks for any valid code. And it says, okay, here on line 11, we have this, print this on the screen. Then it goes all the way down, and it reaches line 14. And it looks, okay, create a variable called lemonade stand of type store and create an instance of this class, an instance of this data type, and put this instance into this variable, into this lemonade stand. And if we look into what the constructor is, what does the constructor contain? Well, in the constructor we have this code. So on the screen now, once we run the program, we're gonna get the output of this code, which is start of the main method, and then the output of this, which because we call the constructor, we're gonna also have this text displayed just below this one. And there we have it. Now, if we go to the step 3, it says inside the main, print lemonade stand to see how Java represents this instance. So if we're gonna do system.out.println, we end it with a semicolon, and we get the name of the variable that holds our new object. Let's see what we're gonna get here. So we're gonna get something like this, which this is the memory location. So this is the address of the memory location where this variable resides, and this variable holds this object. So this, at the moment, in case you thought it's gonna print something else, this only prints the address in memory where this object is located, and we can reference it by using our variable. That's why this also is called a reference variable. If we move to the next lesson, we're gonna talk about instance fields. So essentially these will be the properties that we are gonna create in order to bring into existence our objects. So our last exercise ended with printing an instance of store, which looked something like this. In the first part, store refers to the class, and the second part, so this one, it refers to the class, and then the second part, this one, refers to the instance's location in the computer's memory. So somewhere in the memory, yeah, there's gonna be a small, think of it as like a small square that is gonna contain our object, okay? So we don't care about the memory location, but our instances have no characteristics. So anything that we create, any object, any instance that we create of this class, this is empty. It doesn't have anything. So it doesn't serve any purpose at the moment. But with the help of instance fields, we're gonna see how we can actually create a recognizable object. So for example, if you think of a phone, let's say, will have a color and it will have the size of the screen, and this could be, these two could be instance fields, okay? And then we can also give our phone class, we can give it some sort of functionality or some behaviors. Like for example, say we can create a method called ring, yeah, and that will actually make the phone ring. So whenever we call that method, we're gonna have the phone ringing. So essentially we're trying to model real life objects, so objects that we find around us, because in the end this is what we're trying to do with code, to model real life objects, okay? Now if we want a car instance of different colors, exactly, so let's have a look here. We declare an instance field, okay, so this represents the property that we want our class to have, so that whenever we create instances of this class, we can access these fields, and we can modify them and we can manipulate them, okay? So we have, and we've seen this before, string. So this is the data type, this is the name of the variable, and typically after this we would give it also some sort of value. So let's say we could add after this semicolon, well, before the semicolon, we could have the equal sign, and then in double quotes we can have the text green, for example. So we would have the color, so the variable will hold the value of green, okay? But at this point we are only declaring a variable. So this is only the declaration of the variable, is not the is not giving it a value, okay? So it's not the initialization. So whenever we give it a value to a variable, we declare it and we initialize it. Whereas here we've only declared a variable, we have not initialized it, okay? The declaration is within the class, and the instance, well, of course it's within the class, because we want those properties to be of the store class, of our class. So of course we want those properties to be present inside our class. So the declaration is within the class, and the instance variable will be available for assignment inside the constructor. Fields are a type of state of each instance will possess. One instance may have red as its color, another can have blue, and we'll learn how to assign values in the next exercise. So now if we have a look here, it tells us add some state to our store class, declare a string. So we want to declare a string instance field for product type. So we need to say string product type, let's say, I don't know, juice. Or no, because it doesn't tell us to initialize it to anything. Okay, so if we're gonna run this, okay, we get exactly the same thing as before. Yeah, nothing has changed. And well, this is the only instruction in here. And we need to move on to the next lesson. Constructor parameters. We'll use a combination of constructor method and instance field to create instances with individual state. Okay, so we need to alter the constructor method because now it needs to access data we're assigning to the instance. Our car constructor has now a parameter, string car color. Okay, so this is a value that we pass it to our constructor, and inside the constructor we pass this value, whatever we give it. We say, well, since this is a property of our class, why don't you put whatever we pass it to any object that we create. Okay, so if we put here, if we call the car constructor and then in parentheses we put in double quotes we put green, say for example, then each car that is going to be created from this class by using this car constructor with our string as a parameter with a value green is going to have this instance field populated with a green color. Okay, so we need the value for the instance field color, so we've added string color as a car parameter to the constructor. Okay, we've already seen a parameter in the main method, so string args. Yes, we're going to talk about this later on, but this is the first time we're using the parameter within a value within a method body. The parameter car color references the value passed in the call during a method. Okay, So for example, if we're gonna call it exactly what I was telling you before. So if we're gonna create a new object of the car class and we're gonna use the special keyword new, and then we call the constructor and we pass it this value inside, it's gonna have a look, what do I need to do with this? Well, in here it says the color, and the color being this, needs to take the value that we pass to our constructor. Okay. Now if we have a look at the instructions, it says add the string parameter product to the store constructor. So in here we have to add the string. We have to add this parameter of type string and called product. This could have been called whichever. It could have been called X, okay, but it's not very descriptive. So like we said in previous videos, the names of the variables we are using and the code overall should be as descriptive as possible. Okay, let's run this. Oops. What happened here? Let's run this. Okay, and nothing happens because if we have a look in the main method is empty, therefore nothing is going to happen at this point. Okay, now we move on to the instruction number 2. Inside the constructor method, set the instance variable product type. So this one being this. So inside our constructor, we set the value of our product type, which is the field of our method. We set it to whichever we're going to pass it here whenever we call the constructor with a string as a parameter, okay? So this is a pure assignment, okay? This one. So we said product type, make this have the value of whatever we put in here whenever we call the constructor with a string parameter, okay? If I'm gonna run this, it's gonna run, no problem. We don't have any errors. And at this point, if we were to create a new instance of this class by using the new keyword, like I showed you before, so like so, that object is gonna have this property set to whatever value we will have passed to the constructor, okay? Let's move on to the next one, assigning values to instance fields. Okay, so now that our constructor has a parameter, we must pass values into the method call. So these values become the state of the instance. We create an instance Ferrari in the main method with red as its color field. So we have the car class, the class called car, and this one has an instance variable called color. And we initialize, so see here we only declare it. So at this point this does not hold any value. In fact, it holds, if we were to run this to print this one on the screen, it will hold the value null, so null. And we will talk about this and understand what that means later on. So instead of this leaving this as empty, here in the constructor we say, okay, whenever we want to create an instance of the car class, so whenever we want to instantiate this class, we have to pass it a parameter, and that parameter is going to be assigned to our field of the class.